Hi, everybody. This is John from AU Pack Mule, and today we're going to talk Game of Thrones Season 8 with my buddy W.Axle Foley from DVR Podcast. If you haven't checked out DVR Podcast, go to the description. There's a link there. From there, you'll go to 8 different podcast series, including starting way back in the Lost Days. We would go to Westworld podcast. I mean, there is nothing that's untouched by my buddy W.Axle. So would you like to say hello to everybody and let us know a little bit about how you started Game of Thrones content?
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Usually I'm a podcaster, so every once in a while I have to remember that there's a camera over there. I have, and I also want to thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties and delays and such, because this is you're
necessary. Yeah, absolutely.
You're a good guy. See, the people out there, they don't know. This takes work, people. Work. You got to press buttons and then wait for a long time, okay? It's very difficult. The waiting part is very hard. I have been podcasting since April of 2008. I started podcasting on Lost Mythos with my friend Aaron and all those awesome guys like Jay and Jack and the Black Rock and Heath and Donald and Matt and all these crazy cats, the Lost Lowdown. All these people who are now, in my mind, legendary podcasters, Ryan and Jen from The Transmission, if you remember them. They're actually going to be, Jay and Jack launched a new show. I'll give them a little plug. And they're going to have Ryan and Jen on pretty soon. I can't wait for that, if people remember that. And then, after Lost ended, brother, we kind of were looking for another show, and we actually did an Alcatraz podcast. Remember Alcatraz with Jorge Garcia? Do you remember that show?
I'm not familiar with it, actually.
Okay. You don't worry about it. You don't need to remember because it was terrible. Actually, if you find it, run away. Go the other way because it was so stupid. And we ended up just making fun of it. And then we may have inadvertently created the first hate cast where you make fun of the show. But we stopped because we're not about that. And then we did a show called Podtourage, all this kind of stuff. And then Heath started a show called The Film List. And on The Film List, it was just basically a vehicle for us to talk about TV and film and pop culture and all that. And this little show on HBO came on called Game of Thrones. And every once in a while on The Film List, and actually I release it on Podcast Winterfell. I go back and take those segments and put them in, because sometimes it was just 5 minutes, We'd be like, oh, hey, did you see that last episode of Game of Thrones? Right? None of us were book readers. I'm a super geek. I've read so many book series, and let me be quite honest with you, I barely even knew what Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire was. I think that the people in the community vastly overestimate how popular this was before the TV show started, because it was, I like saying, I was like a super geeky guy. I recognized the covers, you know what I'm saying? But to me, it was kind of like Ringworld or like another thing that I just never got into.
Ringworld.
Like awesome. Terry Pratchett, right?
Right.
It was just another series. I am a hard sci-fi guy. That's my base. Arthur C. Clarke. That's who I grew up on. That guy is my hero of writing and such. I don't know him personally, but I love Arthur C. Clarke, 2001. I'm a hard sci-fi person. And that's why I loved Lost so much, because Lost to me is really a sci-fi show. And I started watching Game of Thrones, and I liked it because there was not a lot of heavy fantasy elements. I'm not a fantasy person. I love Lord of the Rings, but I wasn't really that into it. And it sucked me in, man. And you can hear us progressively get more and more excited until the end of season 1, when we had like an emergency. Well, I think episode 7 or 8, we started picking up on this show is getting awesome. and we started to pick up on the community that was there. You know, we didn't really realize that they're, unlike Lost, where we created the community, right? There was nobody who had been Lost fans for 10 years and then the show came out, or 20 years and then the show came out. We created that community, like in the show Lost, you know, they create that place together. And for Game of Thrones, there was already a community there. And that made it so much actually easier. And everybody was so welcoming and so cool. And then Matt read the books, and Matt started Podcast Winterfell, I think season 3 maybe, or maybe sometime in season 2. We're on episode 367 now. So, and 70% of those, or 80% are Matt, though I was on a bunch of those. I was always on Podcast Winterfell, you know, and we just started doing it. And Matt got into the books, and then I started getting more into it. We started seriously podcasting about it, seriously talking about it. Then we started a show called Podcast Littlefell as a joke, because we were just like a 20-minute talk that Matt would tag onto the end of Podcast Winterfell. Is this story long enough for you, or do you want me to?
Oh no, it's perfect. I mean, it's like
you brought me on
of
to talk,
time,
baby. You got it.
We had the T-Rex.
Yes, then, exactly. You asked for the history. I'm giving it to you, man. Come on.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
This is what we do, right? We digress. Anyway, Podcast Littlefell became the Small Council. So we had a podcast called The Small Council. I know there's another podcast called The Small Council. I think they were actually first. And then Matt stopped doing Podcast Winterfell. First, because of the Sansa rape scene with Ramsay. He thought that this show had a lot of, he felt that they were creating dramatic tension by injecting rape into things, which, let's be honest, they kind of did do that the first 3 or 4 seasons. And he was upset by it. And so we picked up, and that's when we kind of first took on the anchor of Podcast Winterfell with The Small Council. Then about a year or so later, Matt came back, and then he had to leave again. But this was because he had health and other family issues that he needed to take care of. So he handed Podcast Winterfell over to me. And he said, you know, you've been doing it with me. The first time we ever talked on a podcast was us together talking about Game of Thrones. And I was very honored by that too, because he had created a great community of people. And we took off from there. So now it's me, Heath Solo, DJ Tim Hines is on it too, Tracy, Mike Hull. We've got like 5 of us doing all day. I'll tell you the schedule later, but long story short, that's the entire history of how I came to know Game of Thrones. And I still haven't read all the books.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can't wait for you to catch up, because there's so much content in there that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I don't know if you realize this, but a couple of years ago, I did a 30 days of live streams getting ready for another season. And I asked you to come on, and obviously you had dismissed me then because you totally didn't know who I was. But it's so great to have you on. I really have followed you for a long time. So
hey, I appreciate that. And you know what? I saw that message, man, from like 2007. You know what it probably was is I'm so bad at checking all these direct messages. I apologize.
Oh no, please. No, I'm very grateful that I got to meet you through Top Shelf Fandom. Yeah, internet hugs, exactly. all the good feels.
Yeah.
But if you guys don't notice, definitely has a podcast sound to you, and I really appreciate your quality of content as well.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun.
You too. You're doing great work, dude.
Well, thank you. I enjoy this community, like you said, from the beginning, and that's what inspired me to start a channel actually talking about Game of Thrones. And I just thanked all the people that have inspired me. So you're part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, without reading a lot of the book material, was there a lot of situations like with, oh, by the way, spoilers, everything. Up to season 8, I should say, because we're not going to talk about any of the trailer.
Yeah, okay. Because I'd like to talk about that too. Why I'd like to know, because you watch the trailer, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the perspective that you have coming into the season. I'm very interested in that, man, because you're doing the whole deep dive beforehand that I'm not a part of. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to find out what's going on over there.
I'd like to say hello to Gemma from Secrets of the Citadel, Mrs. Cronall, Toklas 420, Danny McKay, all the people that are in the chat. I really do appreciate you being here. I know Amanda was here first. Broken Birds, Katrin C, Piece of Me Sand is also here. Reese O, my buddy Justin from Top Shelf Fandom, Professor Cicely Cogsworth, Alice and Michelle Deneen, all of you guys, thank you again. So in regards to a quick story, I worked for the cable company that's here, one of the biggest companies in the country, and they have representatives from HBO and Stars come by and promote their material. And before they started, they were doing the promotion material, junket, whatever you want to call them, for Game of Thrones, and I got to see a clip with Ned Stark and that whole thing. And from then on, I was a huge Tolkien fan, so I just grasped it, grabbed the books, started reading. By the time we got to episode 9, I was already through, almost done with Feast, so the 4th book.
Wow, so that's interesting. So how did you even keep that in your mind? That, like, if you're reading it, okay, so how far into the first season were you when you finished the first book? Like an episode?
Oh, like the second episode.
Second episode. Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay. So that's interesting to me. I don't know if that's part of my problem, man, is one of the reasons why I'm a reader, you know, and I mean, I can devour, but I haven't, because I feel like I can't bifurcate my mind like that. Like, I kind of want to live out the TV show until it's over.
The interesting thing about the first 3 seasons is because George was so connected with it, it almost followed it. Okay, it followed it almost identically.
Okay,
and there was very few surprises or changes, I think is the best way to put it.
But they did I know so much, though. That's my problem. It's like I know nothing, but I know too much. So I know whole parts that they cut out, like Fagon or whatever, like all this type of John Coddington. I know about all these things that they cut, which actually, when you think about it, and when I heard about it, I was like, maybe some of that could have made Dany's story in Essos a little more interesting if they somehow found a way to inject that politics into her side, and it wasn't her just constantly going like knocking on a door and going, "Here are my soldiers." Like, let's figure out another inventive way to take over this plate, you know? That's interesting, though, that that's kind of what Matt did. I think he was just so inspired. He just devoured the books while the show was, you know what I mean? And I kind of am waiting. Like I've said, once the show's over, I'm going to read all the books, either listen to them or read them. And I couldn't help myself from listening to a good part of the first book already, and Fire and Blood. And Fire and Blood I've listened to like 24 times, dude.
Nice.
I keep on getting it from a cloud library. I don't know if I'm a big library person, and I get all my audiobooks from either Libby or Cloud Library. And I just keep on taking out Fire and Blood, and I know it by heart. And the thing with me is I know this is heresy to say so, but I think that guy is a better narrator than the guy who did the Game of Thrones ones.
Roy Dotrice was the original.
Roy Dotrice. He's too.
Well, he was asked to act it out.
Yes,
so that's the reason he was asked, because he's a friend. You know the story.
No, I don't. Actually, I don't know the story.
So him and George worked together on Beauty and the Beast. Roy was one of the actors on the show, and so they've been friends forever. And because he's in the theater and he can do so many different voices, that's why he was asked. Rest in peace, right? Roy Dotrice, absolutely.
It's great.
And this narrator is just reading the books, so it's a totally different feel. It's almost like when some of the Duncan Egg and Mystery Night and those books are read, because those narrators are from the show and they do the same thing. They just read the material and they don't try to act as each character.
Right. See, I'm not a fan of that in audiobooks. I actually prefer an audiobook where they do not act out the characters, because my mind does that already. I feel audiobooks are like a midway for me, because I'm listening. I don't know how to describe it. That it kind of takes me out of it when Dotrice is too like, and then
right,
the ravens came, and then it's like, oh my God. It's like, Roy, I was trying to sleep here. Like, come on, I can't, and the other, I can fall asleep to fire. I've fallen asleep to Fire and Blood. Probably that's my number one fall asleep thing now.
Right.
But I still listen like an hour before I go to bed, and it's fascinating to me. But I'm also I don't know if you've seen that the Theranos documentary with the woman with the very deep monotone voice, Elizabeth Holmes. It's on HBO. She was like a shyster. She took all these people, said she invented a blood machine that didn't really ever work, but she got all these money from these rich Silicon Valley old dudes.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, because I'm a fan of that. I like a more monotone delivery. That's probably because I sound a little like that.
Exactly.
But I kind of like that. You have a nice monotone delivery too, man. Well, it's very soothing.
Yeah, I do some narration for kids' books, and it seems to
help with
learning disabilities and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Some people in the chat, I forgot, were telling me that, reminding me that Roy Dotrice actually played one of the characters in Game of Thrones.
That's right. Who was
he? Pyromancer that interacted with Bronn and Tyrion when they were making the wildfire.
I remember that. Yeah, yep. He was great too. That's awesome. Yeah, no, he's awesome, man. And I know everybody loves him too, so I don't want to say anything bad. That's just not my style.
Gemma knows his specific name, Wisdom Helene.
Helene,
or however you pronounce it. So yeah.
Almost like Helena, like Mount Helena, like ooh, look at that. There's a connection there.
So obviously you've read Fire and Blood, like you said, a bunch of times, and listened to it at least. Were there any surprises that you found in the books that connected you to the story as it goes through?
Yes, most definitely, which is that the things I found really interesting about Fire and Blood was framing to me. Like, I've always thought, I mean, obviously this story is called A Song of Ice and Fire, and you think about, the Starks and the Northern people and their connection to the magic that exists north of the wall. And then you think about the Targaryens who escaped, right? Valyria, what was it? 15 years before the doom or the dread, because a woman whose name I can't remember had a vision that it was going to happen. And there's that connection to the dragons and the fire. And one of the things that they talk about in Fire and Blood is like kind of almost genetic experiments with the blood of dragons and how the magic, I had never really conceived of that before, that it's almost in the same way. And I think that's such a genius thing that George did, is make so many parallels like, say, the White Walkers to like climate change in a way, or like, you know, there's so many different socio-political and economic parallels, cultural as well, of course. And that is one that I found to be really interesting, that like they basically kind of genetically modified humans to mix with that's what the Targaryens kind of are, right? They're like genetically modified humans. They're dragon humans, you know?
Right.
And one of the coolest stories of Fire and Blood to me is when that little princess goes away on the biggest dragon. I think it's called Valeria, the black dragon. And then she like disappears for a while and then comes back in the and she's on the back of the dragon. And then there's like fire worms in her, coming out of her, and they have like the face of children in them, and like, and that reminded me of Dany's baby that was all messed up. So connecting that then to the Starks and the Northern people and how they are probably like the children genetically modified them. So what you have is like really two sides of humans that are kind of the result of generations of experiments by a higher order of beings, you know, like by magicians. Or with the North, it's almost more natural because it came from the magic. And with the dragons, it's like forced by the humans. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool. I love seeing the stories that connect Balerion, the Black Dread, because we
that's what it is, Balerion,
of Drogon, and the similarities are, you know, right there in front of you. And I think it's definitely intentional.
Yeah, and I hope we find out more about that in season 8. I hope we get into, we saw the origin, and I know that's not in the books, right? The origin of the Night's King, where the you know,
that is not in the book, correct?
Right, where the children stab him with the dragon glass or obsidian, and to me, I'm at this point, I'm just thinking to myself, gosh, am I already worried that they're going to put all of that in the prequel and none of it's going to be in season 8?
Well, the prequel description is said that we're going to learn the truth about the Night King.
Right. So that's,
to me, before that even happened, I've always doubted the dreams of the Children of the Forest. As most people know in the chat, I've never really thought that when Bran hooks up with the weirwood tree, there's an element of truth there. I thought that's what they were feeding him to get him to do what they wanted. And that's why he had to be there, because the scene of the Tower of Joy, where Ned is there and fights, you know, Arthur Dayne and all of that. I've never believed that went down the way it did, just because of the way that we hear from Ned's point of view that it's his thought process of putting it in his brain to make it so that if he had to answer any questions about that, he could do it and protect Jon at the same time.
That's interesting. So wait, are you arguing that the visions we've actually seen in the show, they're trying to represent in the same? I like that, because there is a mirror to that in the books, where George is consistently saying that the histories are told by the victor. This is not the truth. This is a story told. Like, it's always prefaced. Someone said, or they told. So if what you're saying is that the actual visions we saw in the show at the Tower of Joy, like him whispering to Ned and things of that, the reason why those interactions were available and happened is because that wasn't really, he didn't travel through time.
Exactly.
He's existing in a memory or a thing that someone else created in the weirwood network.
Yep.
That's what it can do. It can almost replicate. That's, you know,
you would probably associate this with a situation in Star Trek when they go to those
or
hologram
Westworld
rooms. Well,
Like,
Westworld is more real,
well, but when they're in the
right,
cradle.
right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, dude, I like this, man. Hey, that's
Well,
a
what?
really interesting idea, and I never thought about that. And I'm going to really think about that because I'm rewatching. And for Podcast Winterfell, I just dropped seasons 1, 2, and 3 in a row. I'm going to do 4 on Monday. I've been rewatching and just doing one podcast per season. I'm going to pay attention to that because that was so dreamlike, wasn't it? And Bran is kind of shifting in and out, almost as if he was like Frodo taking the ring on and off.
Exactly.
Like it wasn't real. I love that idea that almost the werewood that created that. Right, they're in a holodeck type environment. And you know what that does too? You really got me thinking here. That does give them an out for Bran did everything. Bran created the Mad King, which is kind of fun, but is also kind of a crutch.
Yeah, it's bad writing. So
yeah, it's also, I almost feel like George, as a fan of sci-fi, I know he's a sci-fi fan and horror. I mean, he's just, he reads so much stuff and he's just a genre guy. That this kind of, I've said that I think that the show might go in this cyclical way. To me, it always harkens back to Robotech. I'm a huge Robotech fan. I don't know if I read all the books and in Robotech, it's really a circle. And the creation of life is what they're actually, it's the end game of the story, but it's the beginning of everything. And I think in Game of Thrones, you do have the opportunity here with Bran and the magic that they've created for it to be a giant circle, such as like the Matrix, coming to the end of it. And then he meets with the program and the program says, well, guess what, pal? You're 1 in 50,000 million Neos. You're not really that special. You're just part of the cycle too, and I kind of hope,
the code, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that and the thing is, for practical purposes, can they really do that and then have a whole prequel and a whole series of Game of Thrones shows, which we know HBO is going to do now, because they're under corporate mandate now, right? And their corporate mandate is become, in the next 5 years, we want like 5 Game of Thrones spinoffs, which is what I think we're going to get. And we're going to get Dunk and Egg as this limited series, and you're going to get...
As long as it keeps making money and there's a demand for it, I think it's never going to end.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. As long as they maintain the quality that they are, I'm all for this kind of stuff. It gives people an opportunity to work, to experiment in this universe. It's fun.
Yeah, and with the competition that they're going to get from Amazon with the Lord of the Rings prequel, I think we're going to get even more from Hulu, and it's just going to build up and build up. So yeah.
I want to, while we're on the live here, did you tweet this? I want to be like, yo, Patel.
I did. Yeah, absolutely. People. Thank you.
I got to go on there.
While you're doing that, some of the people were asking about your picture behind you. But before you do that, go ahead and do what you're doing. I want to let everybody know one of the coolest things about the DVR podcast is they have a sponsor that I really, really like. It's cufflinks.com. And for most people, you would think, oh, cufflinks. Nobody wears cufflinks. Nobody wears French cuffs. But there is the coolest amount of stuff. If you go to the cufflinks.com website, you'll see ties, all kinds of tie clips. And they're not just, formal, stuffy, $5,000, jewelry items, which there are. But they have really, really cool, nerdy stuff like R2-D2 is on there. I mean, every kind of genre from all of the DC comics, all of the sports teams are on there. So go check out DVR podcast. Go to the link of cufflinks.com. And I think if you put in the code DVR, you get a 20% discount. Is that correct?
That's true, baby. DVR 20% discount. There we go. I just tweeted 20% discount. No minimum. Thanks. Yeah, man. They're awesome, dude. I've been really lucky. And Cufflinks, we kind of hooked up together and grew together too. They're our family, and they bought the company, and they're doing great, and we're doing great, and we really love it. It's a great thing. It's fun to come on the old YouTube and talk about it.
Nice.
Oh, look, I can still see my face.
Yeah, that is awesome. I got lucky enough to win a contest that you put out with the football semifinals, I think it was, and guessed some scores right, and got a really cool tie clip from cufflinks.com. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your picture behind you.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's really excited about this.
I even have my hand to the queen pin from Cufflinks.
Yes.
We're going to be giving away every week on Podcast Winterfell, our live call-in show. One person who calls in is going to win a hand of the queen or hand of the king pin every week for 6 weeks, baby.
Nice.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. This picture is my friend Ludwig Anton did this, and it's Firefly, Serenity. Do you notice it? Here, I'll look out of the way.
I don't recognize it, but that wouldn't.
The girl, see, that up here is I always forget the girl. This is Nathan Fillion. Here, I'm trying to point, and then that's the ship.
Nice.
And my friend Lou did that. He also did. I could show you. He did a crazy alien head too. That's out of control. And I have a bunch of his. I've been lucky to have a lot of friends who are great artists, which I try my hand at too, but I just do like shapes and stuff like that, circles, and I like painting.
Very
though.
Cool.
Painting's a lot. I paint Gundam too. I do that. You know what that is?
I have no idea. You're catching me off guard.
Oh, okay. Here, take a look. I got one right by me. See that?
Oh, gotcha. Yes, I do know that. Yeah.
That's my Gundam. So I do these Gundam. This is my gold guy here that I painted gold, a little Zaku. And they also do, I keep them by my desk. People recognize this, RX-7. That's a model that I put together.
I remember seeing you post that.
Yeah, I love this stuff, man. I'm all about being able to show. Now, see, this is something, though, that everyone will recognize. You recognize that guy, right? Use the Force. Luke, I am your father.
I'm your mommy.
This is a model, too, man.
That is awesome.
This is about 400 or 500 little pieces. You put it together. Bandai models. I love it, dude. Actually, we may start doing a podcast about models soon at some point. You never know.
You always enjoy doing something when you can share it with your family, and I think that's one of the things that's really cool about that.
Yeah, I do that with my son. We love it.
Because you can't let him watch Game of Thrones yet.
No. That's the thing is he asks, I have a son, he's 6 years old, and he always asks about, what are you talking about, Dad? Say, I'm talking about Game of Thrones or Westworld. He goes, I don't know any of these shows.
Right.
I don't know nothing about it.
Do one on Paw Patrol.
Yeah. Oh, well, he has done some reviews with me.
Oh, nice.
We've done a couple. I'm not getting him into like doing it full time, but he comes on and he did a couple reviews. We did a review of when She-Ra came out, the new She-Ra, and I talked about it. And I was like, oh, yeah, does she have, her cousin? And he's like, how do you know about that? He was like shocked. And I was like, because He-Man and She-Ra was on when I was a kid. And he was just like blown away. Because She-Ra's totally different now, man. She lives in like a virtual reality world and like crazy stuff.
Like in the weirwood trees.
Yeah, what a great I had never thought about it that way before. You've really got me thinking about that, man.
Yeah. Well, we get told over and over again with the POVs that these characters don't always tell the truth. Cersei says it right off the bat. Ned was coming back from a brothel drunk, and my brother and got in a fight with my brother. We know that's not true. So there was, case after case where you have to kind of interpret the truth, and that is one of the things that I cannot by any means accept that as what we're seeing is not the truth. So The other thing too is that the child of the forest that's actually doing the stabbing with the obsidian is her name is Leaf, and Leaf was born 100 AC, so she's she's not been around for very long, and we're told that the Night King has been around for 7,000 or 8,000 years. So,
well, doesn't that now that's an interesting thing too, right? And where we can talk about if they're going to touch upon this in the show, as I know they've done with the history and lore. And I'm again, I am unclear sometimes whether something has been mentioned in a book proper or another story or Fire and Blood, you know what I mean? Or Ice and Fire. But the idea that there's that whole story of the Night King actually being a Stark who was a brother of the Night's Watch.
Right.
And then he married what was either a wildling or White Walker woman. And so how could that be true? Because how could the Night King exist after the wall was built?
Right.
You know what I like?
It totally doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make it. I mean, we know he exists after the wall was built now, but why would the creation of that person happen after? So that, but again, see, that's what points me to the cyclical thing, right? That it's a thing that the Night King is not an individual. It's a role.
Position.
Yeah, it's a position.
Kind of like Arthur Dane is the Sword of the Morning.
Like the king is the king. Like Joffrey was the king. And for our understanding, it's the Night King. It's a different dude, you know? And maybe when we ask, like, I would be interested in knowing, and I'm trying to ask as many people as possible as we enter this 8th season, because will we find out why are the White Walkers coming down to Westeros? Why are they? What's the reason? Is this a cycle of winter, or I did an interview with a guy the other day, Joe Caporoso, who is on a New York Jets podcast that I love, and I had him on to talk Game of Thrones. And he had the theory that the Night King, because that was a human, the reason why they're coming down is because he actually has like personal business that he wants to settle. Like it's a human emotion that's driving it.
Sure. But
I'm interested now. You're the man with the theories.
Well, in the Entertainment Weekly recently put out a bunch of covers, and one of them was with the Night King, and in that they interviewed the actor that plays the Night King.
No spoilers though.
No spoilers, but but he actually gave some information in that that there's 3 pieces specifically, and I'll share them with you if you'd like. But basically, he was saying that he has a specific target, and I think that was kind of evident in last season. That was one of them, and that he is a bad guy. He's not supposed to be part good and part bad, that sort of thing. And then there was one other, and I forgot what it was, but one of the interesting parts of the cover is that if you zoom in on his eyes, they actually become the 7-pointed star from the Andals, and that's pretty cool too.
So from the Andals or the first men, right?
Well, the first men are the first men, and the Andals are next.
They were next.
They introduce iron into the equation as far as the armament and that sort of thing. And they also have a different architecture that they introduce to Westeros. And then the Rhoynar are after that.
That's so interesting. I love that. First of all, it doesn't bother me that he's a bad guy too, because in this world, saying you're a bad guy, I can still like you. You know what I mean? Like, or I can still find you interesting. I'm saying.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, you're not Jaws just wanting destruction. There's an intelligence behind it, and I like that idea that he has an intent. That's so important, right? Because for me, and I've heard book readers say this too, what separates this evil, this terror, coming from conflict, coming from the North, is that there is some sort of reason behind it, that it's not just willy-nilly, we want to kill everybody, that there's a reason for it. And I like the idea that he would say that, and the connection between a former people, right, who were involved, supposedly, if I remember correctly, and like we're going to say, find out in the prequels, in the actual creation of the Wall and the Night's Watch and the Night's King, and this whole basically human, right, versus magic, right? Because that's basically what it is.
Exactly.
And how the humans, I think was it the first men or the Andals were the ones who cut down all the weirwoods?
Well, both actually.
Both. Okay. Well, that's surprising that, that's just a human thing. That's what we do.
Right. Well, when you have a resource like the weirwoods, and you don't know that they're special, you would want to use them because they don't ever rot. So they're unlike other trees. So that's why they would use them, and that's why they were cut down. So
yeah, even when you find out what their worth is to the indigenous magic people, it continues.
Well, that's an Avatar kind of a thing. So
yeah. But I'm saying, though, it plays into what you're saying, is why the Night King, right, is he still carrying on that war, right?
Well, that's the intention,
of
the Children of the Forest.
And then you see this 7-point star, and they create, if that story is at all true, that they had maybe in this vision it was Leaf doing it, and that's a representation of somehow the children being responsible for turning a man into a White Walker, right? Then you would think that there would maybe be some kind of anger from that man. Like, look what you did to me, right? And then eventually, isn't that why the Wall was created? Because men and children had to come together to put down the Force, right? Like, from what I understand, this is in some way an allegory to nuclear weapons. Hasn't George somehow explained that? Like, we created it, but we have to, like, the children created it to fight the men, but then it became overwhelming to both of them, so they had to band together with the men to stop what they initially created.
Yeah, there's definitely an intention. The problem that I have is that we haven't seen anything from the Children of the Forest that prove to me that they have this ability. Because if they did, and it really was effective, wouldn't they be doing it an awful lot, much more than just one time? Just 8 came in. Thanks for being here. AirTouch Altonos, a great artist. If you've ever seen any of his work, he's just outstanding. So thanks for coming. But let's take it, for example, they use obsidian blades, whether they're arrowheads or spearheads, and they're battling with the First Men. And all of the times that they've been battling, they're supposedly, thousands of years, they're battling First Men and Andals. Wouldn't you think one of these blades would have accidentally gone into the heart of a human? Considering that they have no body armor. They're not like knights of today.
Right, but that could be, but don't you think that piece of obsidian was not, it was more about the magic that they imbued into it, and then it served, to me, it seemed, and perhaps, I'm jumping late on the bandwagon here and you've thought of this, it just it's a vessel. It's imbued with whatever they give it, right? It's just a carrying vessel to put that into them. You see what I mean? It's like a needle.
I think what you're saying is that they did something to the blade prior to putting it in the Night King's chest.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they use the ceremonial stones around it and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting idea, but I don't see what they could do to it. I think what I'm trying to convey is that I don't see anything from the Children of the Forest that give me the ability to think that they could do that procedure.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think?
I don't know, but I don't think it has anything to do with the children.
So maybe they're trying to fool again. Like they were continuing their age-old deception,
right,
up to the point of Bran getting there and going through all of this and being killed. And then the last of them, as we know, but I don't know if I believe that. I think we'll probably see more of these children, so we find more of the story, right? Don't you think so?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting. You know what, dude? That is some upper level thinking going on, and I like that. That's Lost style, where there's always another layer, right? Like you think you've uncovered that story, but really what you've uncovered is another lie and another layer that takes you to the real crux of what's going on.
Right.
Why the deception, right? I like that.
The Imagination Realm says, so you think the Children of the Forest don't have any magic. I'm not saying that they're not connected with nature and they don't have an understanding of nature, but the whole destroying the land bridge to stop the First Men from coming over to Westeros, they haven't done anything on screen or in the books, and there's been a lot of material written that have shown me any reason to believe that they could do anything of that of that spectacle, I guess is the best way. The magnitude is not there. Yeah, they're creepy. Catherine, I can't agree with you more there. They're definitely weird, and their connection with the Starks go way back, and I totally get that's even really creepier, that you would want to marry some animal or some different species, that sort of thing. But their abilities of doing anything other than primitive war and connecting with nature, I think is the same. Much like our connection with the Native Americans. We have I have great respect for everything that they stand for, and the fact that we destroyed more culture than you can imagine. But as far as them causing earthquakes or making it rain or anything like that it hasn't been. There's no proof, I guess, is the best way to put it.
No, I like the way that you use our modern and our own real world examples, because I think that's what George does so often. And you're really making me think, man. I really like this idea because it does really go along. There's a lot of, I guess, it's hard to say things like evidence, because when you're a writer, you can just write whatever you want. The first sentence of the new book, Winds of Winter, if it ever comes out, could everyone, could say like, by the way, dragons can talk. And then the dragon said, how you doing? Can I have a sandwich? And then everyone's gonna be like, this is not canon, right? Like there's no evidence in the novels that dragons could talk. And it'd be like, well, because you can't actually get evidence from something that someone created. And also the guy has said over and over again, everything that you read could not be true. And that's kind of like, I like that about him, I like that. It's very, I think I'm actually going to use this in a correct terminology. It's very Zen, because what he's saying is the world is. That's it. And if you want to believe this history, fine. Maybe it's true. But guess what? The only thing that is now. This is all we know. All of history and all of theories or what we think is to come is not. The only thing that does exist is what's in front of us right now. And that plays out on the show with the way sometimes magic works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm doing the rewatch now, and did the leeches actually kill
Right.
Joffrey and
right.
and all these people. Was Stannis really have the power to kill everyone by dropping a bunch of leeches that came off
Gendry.
Gendry's weenie?
Right.
Who knows? But they're dead, right? And like you're saying, there is the children. Perhaps we don't know what else goes on north of the wall. It's vast, uncharted territory. There could be cities, there could be civilizations of the children or of the night. There could be a whole nother war or something happening that we know nothing about, and that the children are involving Bran and the three-eyed raven and all of this, who seem to exist in their own little place, right? Apart from everything.
Sure.
It could be that the children are continuing an ages-old manipulation, and it's kind of like a power move to say we created these things. Gives them a certain power, doesn't it?
It is exactly that. Yeah. Catherine Cornwell says, could it be that the children of the forest use magic they couldn't control or understand? They may have gotten lucky. It's kind of like when someone has a plan to take a dragon, then what? I think if you go to the Land Before Time, and you remember they had the stones and they would put them together and practice to see what does what.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying. And I don't.
Oh, you mean the Land of the Lost?
Land of the Lost.
When they
right,
go into
sorry.
that's right. They put the gems. What does this one do? What does that one do? But, you know, she makes a great point. If it wasn't she, makes a great point, because even in this show, we've seen that so much of any time anyone does magic, they're not sure. It's like we just pointed out. Even Melisandre says, the Lord of Light works in his own ways. I do not, you know, I cannot say why, right? So it's always that mystery, which of course gives you that cushion of disbelief, right? Like, if you can't predict it, then how can you say it can't happen?
Right.
Right? You can't disprove something that is unpredictable, because the only thing you're going to use to prove it is predictability.
Right.
So I find that to be interesting too. She does bring up a good point, because who knows that they, just like all the symbols we see, it could actually be, and it's leading me down a road of thinking that perhaps what the children, perhaps they happened upon an age-old evil or power that had been put down by someone else. You know what I'm saying? That there's a longer history. Perhaps the White Walkers are the original humans, that we have it that we have it flipped. That in this world, it's not that they took humans and turned them into White Walkers. It's that White Walkers were actually humans, and humans are kind of a more distilled, dulled down, pacified version of the White Walkers that were created by some other magical people. You know? I don't know. Now I'm really getting into it.
Yeah, does
that make sense?
I've never thought of it that way, because if that were the case, they would have no problem reproducing, and because obviously in order to get the dumbed down humans, you would have reproduction, and
maybe they kept them on the side. You know what I'm saying? Maybe like humans were pets to these White Walkers. You know, that's
regular humans were pets. Is that what you said?
Yeah, maybe the humans were kept to the side, and they were thought, like, it makes me think of Planet of the Apes. You know, where you reverse it, and then what happens? It's like almost hard for your brain to quantify it. Like, you know, we're in, you know, it's like the old Star Trek episode, the zoo, right? We're in the zoo.
You still don't have any other examples, for me anyways, of where the children did something that changed nature.
Yeah.
Whether it was literally planting a garden, or you know, creating a weapon of some sort. You know, but the Hammer of the Waters, it just seems like this mythical arc story that a lot of us use in regards to Noah, you know, and that flood story.
Yeah.
It just seems very strange. So
You do have the idea, though, that this was a absolute last case, we're gonna die scenario. Do you know what I mean?
They were going to die for thousands of years. I mean, when they saw the first men come and start destroying their land, basically.
But we don't. But even the history you're talking of now, we don't know that that's true, right? That's the funny thing about this book. When we go into trying to use things as examples, we could even say we could get into so much theorizing. But I see. I like where you're coming from. I think
stories about the giants battling the children, and you don't see any examples that they give over what they did to, overcome the giants.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, man. And I hope that I think
we've got 24 more days. So
the more we talk about it, though, the more I do think that we'll probably see more of this stuff in the prequel than we will in season 8. I think they'll touch upon it. I think they're going to touch upon it in season 8. But that I do think that if you're going to talk about the origins of this stuff, they're probably going to leave us little breadcrumbs. You know what I mean?
I don't think we're going to get anything in this series. I think it'll be saved for the long night or whatever George is working on. Mrs. Cronal also asked, will we be shown the Night King's home? Again, no, I don't think so. Hashtag, where did they get the chain? I think that's the funniest question ever. I always believed it was one of those things where you have the little toilet paper thing and you just add a little water and it expands. That's the chain. Don the Kraken Wit is here. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it, buddy. It's so fun talking to all you guys. I really appreciate it. We have Axel Foley from DVR Podcast. The link to DVR Podcast is in the description, so definitely check that out.
Yeah,
there are a list of great podcasts that he does. So in regards to season 8, you've been kind of protective and you haven't heard about the trailer, or you haven't watched the trailer.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. Yep.
And I don't know how that's even possible. In my brain, I'm like consuming. Yeah. I've seen the trailer probably literally 100 times, and I can tell you every second of it. But I think the coolest thing is, what are you expecting from season 8?
Well, first I'll tell you that once the first episode airs, I will be feasting on coming up next week trailers and jumping on, hopefully, In Deep Geek, you, Justin, hopefully you all come on my podcast. And I want to talk about all that kind of stuff. And I know the joy of that, man. Like, you're talking to a guy who did a podcast when I think it was season 5 of Lost. They had a premiere on the beach in Hawaii, and a crazy Lost fan hung a little computer camera. Like, remember, you used to have to plug it to your USB, right. Hung it out the window. And we watched the premiere with barely even able to see or hear it. And then we did a podcast on it. And that was insane. Okay. And it was very fun. And throughout all the whole podcast, we're like, I don't know if we really saw this, but, like, we didn't even know what we were talking about. So I am amazed now, 10 years later, 11 years later, when I saw there was a person on Twitter that I follow who was like, here is my trailer breakdown. I spent 60 hours breaking down the trailer, and here is a 3-hour video. Like, everything in the trailer, and people used to make fun of us and call us insane and crazy. And like, I can remember friends saying to me, like, who the hell wants to hear you talk for 3 hours about a 30-second trailer? And now we all do it. Yeah, me too. Me too. And now it's normal. So right on, people. I love all of you, everyone in the chat, everyone listening and watching. We're all a family.
Who does 30 days in a row of the live streams?
I love it.
I I haven't done 30 days in a row now, but I plan on continuing this about Game of Thrones season 8. It's just so much fun.
I hope I can come back, man. I'm having a great time. But just long story short, I want to go in pure. It's been so long, and I get so spoiled because I do the podcast, even if I don't want to be, right? And I don't get mad about it. I never get mad about it. I've already accidentally found out a couple things from the trailer. But I've waited so long. What has it been, 16 months or something like that? I mean, I don't even know how long it's been.
Too long.
And I just want to hear ching, like the HBO, the static. I want to don, 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 don. And I just want to sit there and get nervous like I'm going to have a panic attack, because that's what happens when Game of Thrones premieres every year. I get super nervous. I don't know why. And I just want to be hit with the first image. And I want to say, oh, look at Dany's hair. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, what's up with Jorah Friendzone's beard? It's a little longer now, you know? Like, I don't want to even see the trailer. I just am going to wait. And that sucks as a content creator because I can't join in on all this stuff. But I'm going to join in on it later. What I want from season 8, man, more than anything, is I just want to have fun. Yeah. You know, I just want to enjoy it. I want everyone to have a good time. I know I am in Facebook and Twitter, you know, groups of like book reader, more podcasts, and I can see people are already being like, "Oh, the show people are back." Like, oh, hey, is anybody else a little bit annoyed that all the show people are back? And it's like, oh, you mean the 99% of fans of this? Exactly. This, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is the most popular television show in the entire world. It is the largest production in the history of film and television, and that's not said enough because it is. And more continuous shooting than it's ever been done on a television show before, more locations, more cast members, the most expensive television show in the history of the world. I could go on and on, you know? But
I think we all know that.
Yeah, I just want to have fun, and I want to be blown away. And above all else, I want them, I want them to end this story. You know? I know the prequels are coming. I know there's going to be spin-offs. I know we're all going to want like I'm of the Sam or Little Sam is King or something crew, which I think probably is like half the people watching the show think Sam's going to end up. And like, I'd love to see Sam's story, but I want to see some people die. I want some definitive, I want to see some people live and you know, I hope that we're really going to have an end here, you know, because that's one of the things I do worry about. With the recent news about HBO and the takeover and the new initiatives of more content, and you see there's huge turnover at the highest levels of HBO now. And if you know about TV, which is what I'm into when I'm on Daily DVR, we cover a lot of TV and business news. I do worry that, you know, they're not going to end this thing. But I really do want to see some sort of end to this story.
I think ending well is the most important thing to any of us. We've all seen episodes where we just could not believe that they did that to some of our characters. But I agree with you 100%. Ending it well is important.
Yeah, and maybe not even well. I just want them to end it.
Because really, you don't want it to continue, huh?
Well, it's just because I feel like this is the world we're in now. You know, like I love the Marvel movies. I've come to love them more since I've watched them with my son. But when I watched Infinity War and like half the people all died, I was like, they're not going to die. They'll come back somehow. They'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like it was crazy. I loved the movie. I was like, wow, I can't believe they did it. But I like when Ned had his head chopped off, guess what? Ned didn't come back onto the show.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what I like about Game of Thrones is as I'm watching, as I'm rewatching, the finality of it, the visceral human finality of it has been something that has been important to us as viewers. And that's what I mean by it. I should have prefaced that more.
Yeah, it sounded like you were ready for it to be over.
No, I love it. I want the prequels. I want everything, dude. I want.
I was just going to end the broadcast.
Like, oh, you want to come back, Axel? What do you want to come back to? Fuck this show? No, excuse me. Sorry, my French. But I just feel like that's what I mean. You know, like Jon died and he came back, right? And that actually set a kind of a bad tone, I think. And I know a lot of other people worried about that too, because with magic and all this and Bran being able to go, that's why I'm excited by your idea that he really didn't go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Because though as a sci-fi fan, I like that stuff.
The time travel.
Yeah, I like the time travel. I like multiple dimensional universes. I like every time is all happening at once. And I'm into that because that's actually how I look at my life and the world. It's not just a theory. That's actually how I think the world works. You know, so I'd like to see that represented. But there's a lack of finality to some of that I find a little bit unsatisfying. So if Dany dies and then comes back as a White Walker, I don't want them to figure out how to turn her back to a human. I want her to die. You know what I mean? Like, I want finality, because when I watched The Red Wedding, and if anyone listens to my season 3 podcast, I sign off by telling everyone I love them, because I was like emotionally shook from watching that. From as a parent.
How could you not be? Yeah.
Yeah, as a parent, watching a mother. I mean, literally, dude, I counted it. For 15 seconds, she wails after she cuts the throat of Walder Frey's wife, until one guy just pops up behind her and cuts her throat. And even after she gets her throat cut, she still goes on wailing, and then she just falls and they cut. I mean, that is meaningful. When Jon was originally killed, I think a lot of people don't point to that anymore as like a shocking thing that happened, because we all knew he was coming back. You know, like I knew, and I'm not even, I mean, I just knew as a kind of a TV, how they were going to tell the story. So in this final season, if in episode 3, you know, I'll pick. I don't want to. Everyone gets mad when I pick some random.
Oh no, nobody gets mad because everybody's already.
If Arya takes one in the eye, you know, and dies, I want her to be dead.
Right.
That's kind of what I mean by the finality of it. I'm getting nervous.
There should be consequences for being at war. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why this show has this. That's why this show sucked me in, man. This show did not suck me in with dragons and magic, even though I do kind of like that stuff, but I like robots better. It sucked me in because it was a drama, a human drama. And I felt Ned's frustration in not even wanting to go to King's Landing, you know?
Exactly.
So that's what I want out of this. I want to be, I think a lot of people have felt disconnected from this show past season 5. And it's not just because of the books. You know, they don't have the books anymore. I think it's because, in a way, they need to return us back to what's most important about this show, which is the characters, you know, and caring about what actually happens to these people and feeling real emotion, which is the same reason why people love the books.
Exactly.
Right? Like you could take a lot of, like 100%. The books don't even have as much of the magic in them. It's about the people. You know, it's about the humanity of it all. And that's what I want out of this season. I love the spectacle. Okay? I love dragons. I love CGI, blah, 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 you know. But as you mentioned before, Avatar. I mean, come on. Do we want Avatar or do we want Game of Thrones? I want Game of Thrones.
Me too.
I don't need no freaking 3D dragons coming at me. I want something that pulls my heartstrings.
Right.
You know, like seeing Arya turn into a vicious killer because she's seen her whole family massacred in front of her.
Exactly.
You know, like that's what I want. You know, or the butcher's boy, or her anger for the Hound over that one murder. I was just watching the scene in the tavern when the Hound almost is kind of losing the fight, and Arya's you're wanting Arya to rescue him because he's the Hound, but then you remember this bastard killed her friend for no reason. He stood up for the bastard, for Joffrey, the worst of them all, you know? And now we're cheering for him. That's what makes this show amazing.
Yeah, I agree. There is having consequences in the show have definitely paid off, and I think that's one of the things that George is trying to write, is that when it comes to war, there, you know, somebody has to pay, and it's usually either your dad or your brother or your son, etc. And that's one of the things that I think he really does want us to know.
Yeah, I mean, dude, definitely. We're here, right, in our houses with this advanced equipment, doing a YouTube live stream, and there are people in this world right now who are living in war.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know, and that's a reality. That is a reality right now, and one of the things that I've loved in my rewatch is seeing the little bits in seasons 2, 3, and 4 that show a world in absolute utter chaos, a world where a man and his young daughter may not live the winter, right? Because he's too weak, as the Hound says. That is the kind of stuff that has really got me. So though I'm interested in the White Walkers and I love all the mythology and who's going to be king and who's going to live and who's going to die, I'm kind of interested in, is Tyrion really in love with Dany, or is he is he just think that it's not a good idea to have this love affair while they're trying to save the entire damn world? You know what I mean? Is he concerned as a hand, or is he jealous?
I think he has a romantic streak in him that is too deep to, and in a lot of times it's superficial. But in the case of Dany, I think he's overwhelmed by how beautiful she is, and to me, that's what I think with Tyrion. But
that was strange, though, wasn't it? But I like the way they included that at the end of the season
7. Yeah, it was very awkward, to say the least, because you definitely know that he's far more intuitive to know what's going on to begin with, right?
Yeah.
But as far as Tyrion goes, are you a big fan of having Peter Dinklage play Tyrion?
I love Peter Dinklage. I love Tyrion. Yes, I think he's amazing, dude.
Do they go hand in hand? I mean,
he was. You actually accidentally hit upon something. I love that dude. I was a huge fan. I used to work for a place. I always have to name drop. I used to work for a place called World of Video in Manhattan, and it was like the best video store that ever existed in my mind. There's other people. I know you have Scarecrow up there in near Seattle.
Right.
I don't know if you ever went to Scarecrow. That's like the best video store in the world right now. We never had the square footage that they have. But Peter Dinklage was a member of World of Video. Peter Dinklage is also born on my birthday. We share the same birthday.
How cool is that?
And
from the state?
Yeah, of New Jersey, too. Both of us. He actually, I think he grew up in like Morristown or something, which is 2 towns over from where I grew up. He great movie theater. The first movie theater that ever had stadium seating in our area was in Morristown, Washington headquarters, AMC 10. I talked to him a bunch when he came into World of Video. He's a super cool dude. He's married to, I have a lot of connections to this guy. My wife's like college roommate or something, like her friend is married to him or went to his wedding. I don't know. Anyway,
Went to his wedding.
I also, yeah, it's weird, right? I have all these stupid connections. Doesn't mean anything. He's like, who's this idiot on a podcast trying to talk about me? But I was also a huge fan of The Station Agent. This is one of my favorite films. And if you haven't seen The Station Agent yet, you got to go out and see The Station Agent. It was directed by the guy who directed the first original pilot of Game of Thrones. And it's one of the reasons, I think, why he was chosen.
Wow.
And why Peter Dinklage is in it too. So he's an actor. I always forget his name. He was actually in The Wire. I don't know. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. I'm such a, I always, well, you're older like me. You know, you forget things as you get old. Right?
I am way older than you. That's for
You're
sure.
not way older than me.
I am way older than you.
No way. Come on. I doubt that.
So,
yeah. Okay. So The Station, see how he played a guy. Yeah. Finbar McBride in The Station Agent, one of my favorite films. And this film was directed by, I'm going to hit the IMDb up here right now because look, I'm looking on my phone. This is fun on YouTube. You can do this. Look at that. He looks so young in this. It's so crazy. Tom McCarthy.
oh,
I'm sorry. So Tom McCarthy directed it, who also directed Spotlight,
Mm-hmm.
won the Academy Award Best Picture. Tom McCarthy played the reporter in The Wire, if you remember The Wire.
Sure.
And he directed The Station Agent, who was also the original director of the Game of Thrones original pilot. We did a thing called the Director's Series on podcast Winterfell, where we went over the entire unaired pilot and what was different about it and why they did it. And then we kind of tried to figure out the differences when we watched the pilot. Mike and I, as directors and filmmakers, we looked at it. That was a lot of fun. But I love Peter Dinklage, man. He's the show, right?
He is.
I mean, he's the show. And the thing is, when I rewatch season 1 and 2, I see how it was understated. He was always there to provide a little comic relief. And then you have that stuff with him and Bronn. But then his character becomes so much stronger and better. And then leading up to being accused of Joffrey's murder, where I am now in season 4. It's just amazing, man. I love Peter. That's my long love letter to Peter Dinklage.
Nice.
And watch The Station Agent.
Super cool touch. Yeah, one of the people in our chat, Connie Super, said that was a good movie. So
yeah,
very cool.
It's really good.
Do you think that they changed his character to make him more likable? I mean, because of it being Peter Dinklage?
I don't know. Is he more unlikable in the books?
Oh, he's disgusting in the books. Yeah.
I've heard that the facial, like that the scars are different, that in the Blackwater he had like his nose completely cut off.
Right. It had nothing to do with the physical
okay.
scars. It has to do with his behavior.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I would think so, definitely, man. Yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, and I don't, you have to do stuff like that when you make a film or TV. There's changes. You have to make some people a little bit more likable. You can't have as much. It's harder to have the same nuance and depth of character in a television show or a film that you do in a book. It just, you don't, you could explain someone's pathology in a paragraph in a book, and then it could take a whole series to show that, and that's part of the art and subtlety of filmmaking, is that because you are under the impression that you're seeing everything, you can peel a character back. And I think maybe they did kind of do that with Tyrion. He does become, as many of the characters, his brother included, become more likable as time goes on. You side with him more. But you're right, he was presented more as a intelligent drunk, a good-natured guy from the get-go in this, And he's also, his character is, I often notice that they use his character as a sounding board for other characters to emote to.
Correct.
And they needed that. You need that in television. You need to have a character that is the listener, and that's what he serves. even if you see in the first couple of seasons, most of Cersei's character is fleshed out in conversation with Tyrion. They have 3 or 4 very interesting conversational scenes that are rather long, in which they discuss their upbringing, Joffrey, the supposed affair with Jaime, which we know is true. And Tyrion provides almost a sounding board for her, you know? So he's been such an important character to this show. I love him. Is he your favorite character?
No, he's not even in my top 5.
Oh, who's your favorite?
Actually, altogether, I would say Brynden Rivers, the three-eyed raven, is my favorite because I've read his, Dunk and Egg Tales all the way through. And so he's been like the consistent person that's there. He's also very misunderstood because he's an albino with the red scar on his face. He has a love interest that puzzles him, his whole life, and he defends his family, pretty much to his death. And
that's cool. I don't know much about him.
Oh, to me, he just seems like the one character that goes all the way through the story and is consistent with his beliefs and sticks up for the right thing.
I'm going to guess that doesn't benefit him at all.
No, because his family members sent him to the wall, right? He had to live.
A little bit about it. Yeah. I look forward when I said this on my podcast on Winterfell. One of the things I look forward to this season being over is so I can read all these books and the Dunk and Egg and all this kind of stuff. I have really purposefully kind of not done it because I want to keep my mind on as much as I can kind of on what's happening on the show. And then when the prequels start, man, we'll do tons of podcasts where we can talk about the three-eyed raven and all weird stuff.
Nice.
I'll know about it by then because this off season I spent more time listening to Fire and Blood and some of the books. Like what I'll do is I'll listen to some chapters, and just to kind of get a perspective.
Yeah.
And I didn't rewatch until I just started rewatching 3 weeks ago. I didn't watch one episode of Game of Thrones for over a year, and it's just because, honestly, because it's a little bit like crack too. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. I'm an addict.
Dude, I couldn't stop. And when I started to rewatch, I kept on delaying. Like 2 months ago, I started the first episode, and I just stopped after like a minute. And I was like, I can't do it. And then when I started, I was like, uh-oh, am I going to have enough? I all of a sudden got worried. Oh my God, there's like, there's like 6 weeks or 7 weeks left. Am I going to be able, oh no, am I going to be able to do this? And then of course I finished like the first season, second. It's like, I'm pacing myself now. I'm going the other way, like it's Thursday. I'm up to episode 5. And I know I'll probably be done by Saturday afternoon, so I'll have time to record. But I could be done by tonight if I didn't watch myself. Right. I go right now after we're done here and I'll watch an episode because I love it.
Yeah, there's a channel called Idiot of the Day, and Jeff is doing the same thing. He's been over the last 4 or 5 weeks watching a few episodes a week, trying to catch up. So I totally understand. Yeah, I just really enjoyed his character and his story through the show and through the books mostly because I love the books much as much as I like the Tolkien books, and I know that's not your favorite genre, but
I read it. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I was just saying it just gives me a lot of pleasure.
Yeah, I stopped. And you probably heard this one before too. I stopped at Tom Bombadil. Excuse me.
Bombadil?
Yeah, Bombadil. Sorry. Tom Bombadil. When I got to Tom Bombadil, what was that? The Two Towers. Where's Tom Bombadil?
He's not in the movie, so.
Oh yeah, but he's in the books. That's
Right,
that's where I kind of gave up, and then I think I skipped ahead, and then I finished. I did read a bit of the I'm going to pronounce this wrong too. The Silmarillion.
Silmarillion. Yep.
Okay. Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was just listening to another podcast. Shout out to Tower of Babel. If anyone is a fan, they're doing Game of Thrones too. They're fantastic. Towerofbabel.ca. They're Canadian fellas. And they just did a podcast and they were talking about the Lord of the Rings series for Amazon.
Yeah.
And one of the guys is like a huge Lord of the Rings. Like he was explaining all the different, which I mean, that stuff goes way deep, man, that I didn't even know of, you know?
Yeah.
Like
it's the creation story.
Yeah, the ages. Yes, that was so interesting. I guess that I mean, I'm older, but I ain't dead yet, so I still got time to read some of this fantasy stuff and get into it.
Yeah,
I'm just finding it later. I was really a sci-fi head, and like you hear me talk about Westworld, and I love Westworld, and I intrinsically understand Westworld. Like people are like, this show is confusing. And I'm like, no, this is not confusing to me. It's not confusing at all. This is the way I love thinking.
Not to change the subject, but your season 2, episode 10 explanation is the only one to listen to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You are, honestly, I can say this from the bottom of my heart. I was frustrated to the ends of the earth with that. But the way you explained it, I felt 100% better.
I appreciate that, brother.
Very good. Very, very good.
See, and that's only because I love it. And I just you know what I mean? Like I feel so at home. Like I can see it in your eyes and I can hear it in your voice when you start to talk about the fantasy and when you're talking about the three-eyed raven and your brain center is like turned on, man, you know? And that's how I get with Westworld, because I love that weird kind of time displacement, computer thinking weirdness. I love that kind of stuff. My brain is like trained by reading sci-fi from when I was like 8 years old. That it's just, and so the fantasy stuff I have to kind of get into, and Game of Thrones has really, it's like the perfect thing for it because it lulls you into a false sense of watching a BBC costume drama. And then all of a sudden, it's all this magic is in it. But because it has, like we were talking about, the human, like when you talked about the three-eyed raven, you mentioned things like an unrequited love, you know, standing up for his family. These are human things, right? And I can see that's the aspect of where it got me. And I got more into the magic stuff, you know? Hey, Game of Thrones has even got me to watch Harry Potter. I watched all those Harry Potter movies. And before that, I was like, Illuminoso, when I was like making fun of it, you know, like Harry Potter, wave a magic wand around, you know, but now I'm like, I think it's cool, you know, because I had to see past the genre to see the love.
The story.
The story. And a lot of times for fantasy, the genre obscured that story for me. It didn't highlight it. But Game of Thrones has helped me see how fantasy, like sci-fi, taking it out of our world, can actually highlight the human elements of it. That's why I love it.
100%. Totally agree. Is there a particular part of the story that is fantasy or science fiction that you don't like?
No, I mean, you know, I get, not really. I mean, sometimes the ambiguity of the magic can be frustrating to me, but I've come to appreciate that more. As we've discussed, that was initially very you know, it can seem kind of silly, right? Like you're burning leeches and like, what is the meaning of all this? And I am also by nature a very scientific, skeptical person.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the religious stuff, like the Lord of Light and all that kind of stuff, is not really my bag.
Hocus pocus.
Yeah, the hocus pocus, you know, the grumplings and snarks and that kind of thing. I did a little bit have that attitude, but again, I got turned around, and it's not just the show; it's the fandom too, because I see the way people live this and love it, and listening to people like History of Westeros, Radio Westeros. We were talking about LML before,
Mm-hmm.
who kind of take it to such a degree and live in it, you know, has made me see the value in it and made me be less of a skeptic of that and see it, kind of understand where the kind of the beauty of it too, you know, the mystical and almost sensual nature as well of the magic in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was talking, well, twittering on with the LML earlier about Donald Trump, and it's the same thing. You get it's an illusion of what you're trying to do, and sometimes that's all you need is a little bit of help in the illusion to get your point across. And it's very interesting what people will believe with a little smoke and mirror.
Yeah, use your illusion, baby. Right, volumes 1 and 2. November Rain.
Well, speaking of illusion and smoke and mirrors and all of that, what did you think about? Before I do that, let me just say, Teflon TV is here. Thank you for coming by, my friend. I really do appreciate it. I really hope you're feeling better, and I really am so grateful that you were the first one on the 30-day live stream. It was awesome. But what do you think about the smoke baby? Let's talk about smoke and mirrors.
You know, that was kind of a turning point. And as I rewatched here, because we had seen the dragon stuff with Dany, right? And that was our main. We had seen a little bit of warging, right? North of the wall. We had been introduced to that. But that smoke baby really kind of threw me and made me consider magic as something that I guess I didn't think that. I still have a problem when I think about that smoke baby and how did she really get that power from Stannis, right? It's just like we were talking about the fire and the slugs or whatever, you know, the blood from Gendry.
Sure.
You know, is that really real? And then when we saw Melisandre take off the amulet and turn into like this super old lady, and she might be centuries old for all we know, it's a different world. And it made it allow it in a way. At first, I almost rejected it, and I was like, "What the heck? What are they doing?" But then it made me accept that this was a world in which this stuff happened. But it also made me think of a theory that I have had for a little while about magic in this world, and about how it's really based on almost personal belief, like not God belief,
right,
but belief in yourself and the magic, like Westeros and this Planetos is a place where if you believe that you can harness magic, you can. That it's really available to everyone. But it's just that they believe so strong and so purely that it becomes truth. Similar to Derek. What's it? Beric Dondarrion. Yes.
When Thoros the Mere brought him back.
Right. And that Thoros said, what happened? Well, I had said this 1,000,000 times before, but I just really believed it this time. With all my heart, I believed the words I was saying. and they happened. So it started a theory in me that perhaps this is like a world in which it's like you need to be self-actualized to use magic. You know, you need to or have total blanket belief to use magic, but in a sense, anyone could do it. Anyone could be a wizard. Like when Sam says, everyone wants to grow up to be a wizard, right? Like every boy, you know? I don't know if every boy wants to, but I almost feel like this is a world in which anyone could be a wizard. And all it takes is your own belief in that illusion. You know, like in our world, you can continue that illusion and continue that illusion, but it's still an illusion.
Right.
In that world, you can make it real. Do you think that way? Is that a theory that exists?
No, I definitely agree with you, because we've seen that with Arya. We've seen it with Boros. We've seen it with Mel for the most part, where basically if you, and Danny especially, 100% with Danny.
Yeah.
I agree.
You can manifest. Dude, it's like, hey, we're in the Pacific Northwest, you know, like, you know that we just have to go down to LA. We could ask Keith Snowlow about this in Burbank, about all the people who go, like, how did you get your job? I manifested it, man. I put positive thought. You know what I'm talking about? Like kind of new age. Like I put positive thought to it and it happened. Now, I do agree. I think that that's called positivity and like moving forward in life, keeping it moving, doing your right thing. Whether or not you want to attribute that to an outside force, okay, that's up to you. Me, myself, I don't. I attribute that to you moving through nature and the world. And that's what I find fascinating about this world. And the smoke baby made me confront that in myself, you know, because that was kind of a turning point for me. I think I did think it was a little silly. Now when I see it, I just see the looks on Brienne and Catelyn's faces and how they were as surprised as me.
Yeah.
You know, and how Brienne, how devastating that was to her. There's nothing she could do to protect the man who had just lifted her up to perhaps the first woman ever to be on a King's Guard, right? In the history of Westeros. And then like 4 hours later, he's killed by a smoke baby.
Yeah. We experienced this in Seattle with Russell Wilson, who is the short version of quarterback. And he always preaches to every player on the team, why not us? Why not now? And, and when people bought into it, they, went to the Super Bowl.
There you go, baby.
2 years in a row. So it can happen in real life, but Dangerous is a good player. So I totally understand what you're saying. And I think in so many times we get that in Game of Thrones for sure.
Yep.
So is there anything that you are really not wanting to happen in season 8?
Not really. Not really. I'm totally open, man. Anybody can die. I just, like I said, I want an ending. I'm not hoping, I don't need to see like, I'm not going to be mad if the Mountain and, and the Hound don't fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be upset if it is a circle, if they do it right. You know what I mean? I don't have any, I really am going in very clean, just hoping for a conclusion and some visceral humanity to it.
Nice.
But I don't have any fears. It's, on other shows there is that, you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, man, I hope they're not going to do this.
You experienced Lost. What can you say?
Oh my God. I can say that I love the finale and it was one of the best finales in the history of television. That's what I can say. We created this place together. Huh? I love it. No, I'm usually pretty good. I mean, and as a film and TV guy, I always understand how, again, incredibly difficult it is to make this television program, and how incredibly thankful, and no offense to book people who are annoyed by the show people like me or whatever, but what an amazing job they have done. Now, I know people have complaints. I know they do. But let me tell you something, folks. My favorite novel of my whole life, it changed my life. I love it. I've read it about 300 times, is a novel called Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. USA or Sci-Fi made a 2 or 3 episode miniseries out of it. And it was straight up hot trash garbage. Okay? Like, no thought went into it. It was total junk. They eliminated whole plot lines from it, and they didn't put any money into it. So we have here the most expensive, largest television production in the history of TV. And hey, Dan and Dave made some mistakes. Okay? There could have been better at certain points.
Well, not too bad for their first time.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, man. They didn't, you know what I mean? They did not hire, HBO didn't go to David Simon or Milch or people who have show run before and said, hey, they took a chance. They took a chance on 2 guys on a story that, frankly, most of the HBO brass didn't even know what the hell it was about. They thought they were making a BBC little bit of magic, you know what I mean, type thing. They were at if you remember correctly, HBO was at a little bit more of a desperate time because what's their other signature show now on HBO? Westworld? Westworld didn't exist when they didn't have The Sopranos. They didn't have things were leaving, right?
Yep.
So we have got 8 seasons to come of a hugely expensive production that took thousands of people to make every episode. And we can complain. I know we can complain. It's not perfect. And they've done some things that I don't agree with. And there's some characters they've changed. And Danny stuff was kind of boring for a while. And it is becoming more of a spectacle, right? But still, I love it. And it's an amazing show. And I always keep that in mind. So I give them a little bit of credit. And even there's some endings. People complain about the Lost ending, but was the Battlestar Galactica ending great? I mean, really? Come on. The Lost ending at least was more original than the BSG ending. The BSG ending was like, I had read that literally 1,000 times in sci-fi books.
Where's my Cylon Johns out there and Cylon Jills?
So, I'm not setting myself up. Is there anything you don't want them to do?
Yes, I don't want to hear fingers in the bum ever again in my whole life. I don't want to hear bad pussy. I don't want to hear anything stupid like that. I want straight story.
Yeah.
And I want the heartache. I want the real feeling of this is costing us something. Going to battle and coming up with a solution is more important than bickering amongst ourselves.
Yeah, agreed, man. Agreed.
That's all I want.
Yeah, and I mean, you do bring up one point. Now I have to think about it, which is extraneous B plots. Like, we don't have to get too into it, but let's go get a white so we can prove to Cersei that they exist. Exactly. I mean, that was not
taken a prisoner north of the wall and executed him and brought him back. That would have been so simple, but
it was basically like, hey, how can we get a plot device so the Night King can take down a dragon?
Nine Nichols says, I don't want to see cleaning poop. That's awesome. Yeah. Very funny.
I can see that there was some extraneous B plottage done in order to serve plot and action, or I say over like the arcing story. But I'm not too worried because, like I said, even that was fun as hell. It turned out to be fun. Like, we can complain, but when you actually watch it, the production-wise was amazing.
Entertaining. Yeah.
Yes, it was totally entertaining. So we have to understand that this is a TV show first and an adaptation of George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire second. And it will always be that. anything, whenever you change genres, the first thing they think about is the genre, right? Like when you're making a film, because I've made them, you think about the fact that you're making a film all the time. That is what filmmaking is. That's what some people don't understand. When you sit down to write a book, you sit down to tell a story. Now, I know George is, like he often says, he's a gardener, not a planner, right? Isn't that what?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely, he's definitely a gardener writer.
Okay. Well, guess what?
Allows things to grow.
Yeah, you can't do that on TV. You can't garden a TV show, folks, okay? Because you're not sitting in a room by yourself. You're telling thousands of people, and each one of those thousands of people you tell may have a team. If it's a special effects or a costume, or do you know what I'm saying? There's so many people involved, so many moving pieces to make. I say this often on my show. I challenge everyone this. Make me a video in which a person gets home from work, puts their car keys on a table, and then sits down to watch TV. Go shoot that for me. I'll see you in 3 weeks.
3 hours later. Yeah.
You know, like you it's difficult. And then to get the sound right, even to do it on your phone. Now imagine doing that when you have to do everything from nothing.
Casting, yeah.
Right? You have to cast the people. You have to build their clothes. You have to build the house that they sit in. You have to design their keys, because in this world, the keys are different. The floor is different. The ceiling is different. You can't have any lights. They didn't have electricity. So it's a, and I know people say, well, that's their job. It's still a really hard job.
It's like coaching a football team.
Yeah.
Everything's so detailed.
It's a lot harder than you think. And that's why I'm an appreciator of the TV aspect of things, because I'm a film guy and I've made TV, I've made films, and I know how difficult it is and I know how fun it is. But I also know how much of it is about that you're making a film. Like you're constantly, when you're on a film set, you're constantly thinking about, okay, this is what I see in front of me, but this is what people are going to see.
Exactly.
So even when you come into a room, what's the first shot? Because you have to establish the room. So you're already out of story, right? You're out of the world of the story and you're into the world of creating a movie or a TV show. And that is not something you really have to do when you write, because I've done that too. When you write, you can be free.
Exactly.
Right? Like when George is writing about, ice spiders, he doesn't have to wait and go, oh, shit. Okay. Well, HBO. Yeah. Okay. I got a scene here with ice spiders. How much CGI budget do we have?
Zero.
Okay. I know we used that company before, but I don't think they did ice right. Remember we used that other company that did the ice, because they actually changed companies, if you know this, because the ice didn't look right when it froze. So it's just, this is really, I do keep that in mind as I watch it and as I podcast about it. And that's why I'm a little more positive sometimes, and I can get some heat from it, Oh, you're explaining them away. You're a Dan and Dave defender, and it's like, well, that's because it's very difficult what they're doing. And they've given us something fantastic. And when people in 20 years look back at this series, it's gonna look great. Yeah. Trust me. People are not gonna look back at this series and go, oh, they screwed that one up. They're gonna look back at it and they're gonna say,
greatest television ever.
Yeah. And all the fans of this book who were fans for 20 years before the TV show started should thank their lucky stars that they didn't get a sci-fi 3-episode garbage interpretation of their story. They got the most expensive television show in the history of the world.
Yeah, Karen Pierre actually brings up a super good point. When George wrote this, he was oversizing everything, and it wasn't written to be on film of any kind. It was supposed to be so big and so over the top that it wasn't supposed to be filmable. So yeah, totally great point, Karen. I just really appreciate that.
And you know what? We see that today when people often say, complain, and I have been one too, because I'm a film fan, and because everything is a Marvel movie, there's no money to make dramas. There's no money to make adult dramas anymore, or really to market them, right? You have to have a superhero and IP. But why are they making all those movies now? Because they can. They couldn't do them 20 years ago because the technology did not allow it. People have been wanting to make Spider-Man since the day that comic book came out. Trust me, bro. Somebody bought Spider-Man #1, some film guy, and said, oh my God, if we could make this, we'd make billions. And now they can. And it's the same thing that we're seeing. They're going to make a Lord of the Rings. And so Game of Thrones is in
just think about the original Batman and Robin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
where they're walking up the wall with the rope, and really they're on a horizontal level. Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, it's a square. It's the same. Yeah. So Game of Thrones is revolutionary because it's really the first television show. And you're seeing it now with even shows like The Expanse. They couldn't have done a show like The Expanse 10 years ago, 15 years ago, really. And even a lot of the special effects on Game of Thrones have gotten so much better. Look at the way the White Walker looks in the first episode as opposed to the Night King now. You know what I mean? Like the CGI, the dragons look better. You know what I mean? Like everything has gotten so much better because of the advancements of technology. And Game of Thrones is like really the first show that is allowing that to happen in the same way it happened on film with the comic book movies. So you're going to have people who it's something new. You know what I mean? And I mean, gosh, I think it's amazing how many people love it. It's like when I used to say about Lost, did you really think that the most popular television show in the world was going to be a show set in a alternate universe, medieval times with dragons? I didn't. I thought it was going to be CSI, whatever. I didn't know, that's what's usually popular. So it's absolutely amazing. And like Lost too, I was like, this is the weirdest damn show ever made. What is it? Is it an action? Is it a drama? Is it sci-fi? Game of Thrones is so many different things. It's because it's its own universe, man, So hopefully we all have fun this season.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really do value your time. I appreciate you coming on. I know you're super busy, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really, really, really appreciate you being here.
Oh, brother, this has been so much fun. Good. I love it. I'm going to come back. I want to come back again and do this again. This is a lot of fun.
Justin on tomorrow, so maybe you and him could share a screen.
I will. I don't. Let's see. What's tomorrow? I don't know what I'm doing. I got to check on my kid. Let me tell you, 6-year-old. Well, don't kid. I want it. Are you rescinding your offer now?
No. I'm just laughing.
Don't play with my emotions.
Look at your schedule.
The kid, man. I'll tell you, 6-year-olds, man. It's I'm a stay-at-home dad, so that's my job, man. I do the podcasting.
You're the luckiest guy in the world.
I am, dude. I thank my wife. I love her. It was our 10th anniversary, so I'll give her a shout out. But she gave me the opportunity. All I ever wanted to be was a stay-at-home dad. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I get to do the podcast too, and join you. And this has been a lot of fun, man. I'd love to pop back on. Hey, what's your schedule? I'd like to know, what is your schedule? Because I'm going to put this on my feed too. And I want people to know about what you're doing. What's going to be your schedule for these pods and into the season as well?
I actually don't have a schedule for the season. And the reason is I literally just was hired by a new company, and I'll start on Thursday.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about that, but I don't have anything set in stone. But as far as the next few days, I've got In Deep Geek. Robert will be on the 24th. Claire and Catherine, who's in the chat, will be on sometime next week, and I haven't gotten a specific date, so I'm waiting for them. And then Kevin from Bats Production will be on Thursday. John Del Vento will be on the 29th, and Gray Area will be on the 30th. I still haven't heard from Khaleesi Clues as far as any specific date or LML, but we'll get with them and do a stream with them. So basically, if you just tell me when you want to come on, I will be here. The good thing about you being on the West Coast is that our time is the same.
Yeah.
So I don't have to calculate 18 hours ahead of myself.
I know.
Like I did with Marie from Australia. That was an interesting. Her stream was actually on the next day. So
that's time travel, baby. See, it's all, dude. It's all relative, man. You see, when Einstein said about relativity, it's all relative, he meant it about everything, man. It's all relative. That's a great schedule. And you know what? It's even worse for me because I grew up in East Coast time.
Right. Me
so
too.
Even though I've lived here for 3 years, I still feel like I look now and it's like 2 o'clock, but somewhere in my body, I'm like, it's dinner time. You know what I mean? Like, it's
when you
5
go to
o'clock.
the beach, do you ever go east?
I don't even know east or west anymore. I don't even know where I am.
That's my biggest problem is being on the West Coast. I think beach and I go east because that's where I go to the beach.
Oh, see.
Yeah, not west.
Right.
Yeah,
see, and I'm from Jersey, so I say down the shore.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are in Jersey, you say you're going down the shore. You're going down, right? You're always going down everywhere. You never say, that's another thing about like Jersey is you never say, let me come up to you. You always say, let me come down to you. Even if it's up, you say down. It's just a weird thing. But that's cool, man. I hope you're going to do during the season because I'm going to be jumping to want to do some pre-gaming. I've got our schedule set up. I'm going to do an initial reaction after every single show for 6 weeks. I'm going to have a guest each week. So I'm doing the finale with Heath Snowlow. But every week I'm going to have a different guest. I'll be announcing some of those guests soon. They're a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a deep dive on Wednesday, and that's Heath and I. On Monday, DJ Tim Hines is doing our live fan call-in. So if any of y'all are watching this and want to actually talk and get involved, we do it on the old school talk shoe, baby. And we might get a little YouTube involved. I don't know. We're going to test it. But does YouTube ever have a thing where you could like do a board and let people come on really quick into your live stream? Like
sure, you could do the same thing that we do today, and people could come on and off all the time.
And that's like call in. See, I kind of like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
we're going to try to do something like that. And then on Friday, I'm going to drop, I think it's going to be Thursday or Friday, Mike and Tracy are going to do feedback and also their perspective because they have a more of a historical book reader perspective. Not that really matters so much going into this season anymore because we're past it, but they're awesome. So we're going to be doing like 4 podcasts a week, man.
Wow.
And I am also going to try to jump on. I mean, I'm just figuring for 6 weeks on this is my job.
Nice.
So, I mean, whenever I might, be like, hey, Tuesday, let's talk about that episode, man.
Let's do it.
Because I'm down with it. This is
I
fun.
could talk about this all day long.
Yeah, I'm getting more used to the camera too.
Oh, good.
Because of my training in TV, I used to do live TV. It's hard for me to not pay attention to the camera. Do you know what I mean? Like
sure.
to get ease with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm getting a little, I go back and forth. But I think for now, I'm just going to be guest. I'm not going to launch myself into the YouTube world, but I'll guest.
Nice.
But I do have you see me doing like a lot of, I want to do this all the time.
Talking
I don't know
with
why.
Your hands.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on camera, so I have to perform.
Gotcha.
But you have such an easy way about yourself. You make me feel comfortable. I appreciate it.
That is awesome. That's the best news I've ever heard. So anything that's really fantastic. I'm glad to hear it. Speaking of glad to hear, I'm really glad that so many people came by in the chat. We have Bobby Canelano, Catherine Hardig, AirTouch Altanose, all the way from Turkey. Jenny of Coldstone, John Del Vento, Lady Dreamfire, another fellow friend from New Jersey. Linda R, Living on a Prayer, Liz Kopic, Mary Jade Starkwalker, Mrs. Cronall. So glad that you're here. Always a pleasure seeing you in the chat. OTDA, thank you, David, for being the moderator that you are. Piece of Me Sand, Teflon TV, my friend Tony, thank you. Justin from Top Shelf Fandom, Tolka's 420, and Vanessa Amici. Thank you again for being here. So many great people came by earlier, but those are the ones that are in the chat now. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Man. This is really cool.
Great crowd and great fun and great guest. What more could you ask for?
Nothing more. And I want to thank everyone for coming too and everyone listening. This is why we do this, man. This is so much fun to just talk and, you know, get into this world and share it with other people. And that's why I'm always going to say that the Lost finale was awesome, man, because it's about fandom in the end. We made this world together. This is a separate thing. This isn't the show. This isn't like fan fiction. This is something where we all come together and share with each other.
Thanks again to cufflinks.com for doing the sponsor of DVR podcast. Yeah. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, they're awesome, dude.
It's great having somebody that's so cool sponsor a podcast. So I bet that's really helpful.
That's why I like it, because they actually have stuff we talk about, and it's not like beds or something. You know, I'm telling you to go to sleep every 15 minutes. I'm telling you to wear some cool Game of Thrones stuff, dude. Look at that.
Awesome.
You wearing that? If you walk down the street wearing that, people are gonna be like, "That's cool."
No doubt. No doubt.
Thank you so much for having me, brother.
You bet, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for coming by.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.